Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's conversation. We'll give everyone about 1 or 2 more minutes to join us, and then we will begin our webinar for today. Welcome, everyone, to the latest installment of Homeroom with Education Leaders. Today's discussion is focused on a 2024 look back, AI in classrooms, funding, and the future of education. My name is Jalil Hart, and I have the good fortune of serving as the director of the K-12 team here at the Hunt Institute. And for those of you who might be unfamiliar with the Institute, we were founded by four-term North Carolina Governor Jim Hunt, and we love to serve as a resource for policymakers and on education issues from prenatal through higher education. We do offer in-person and virtual convenings, conduct research, and offer other forms of technical assistance to states across the country. Before we jump in, I do want to provide a brief overview of how we'll spend our time together this afternoon. We'll start with about a 30-minute moderated discussion with our panelists, and then we'll pivot to a Q&A with the audience. So if you have any questions throughout the discussion, please feel free to submit those using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll do our very best to address them throughout the discussion. We will record this conversation, and in the next few days, we'll post it on our YouTube channel. We also encourage you to join us on Twitter, where you can participate in the conversation using the hashtag #EdHomeroom. So with that, let's jump in. I'm so appreciative of our panelists who are joining us today. The dynamic landscape of education in this school year has highlighted the urgency for educators to continue addressing learning loss, while also embracing exciting developments like the integration of artificial intelligence in classrooms. As this year draws to a close, education leaders have navigated ESSER spending deadlines and the need to keep pace with other evolving trends. The conversation today will feature leading experts in the field, and we're excited about the discussion about the past year's educational investments and how leaders can leverage these opportunities in 2025. So to that end, I'm excited and pleased to introduce our speakers for today. We have Sue Ellen Gillum from the Alabama Department of Education, where she serves as Education Technology Coordinator. Srinivas Javangala, this is the Director of Data and Research, also at the Alabama State Department of Education. We have Maggie Chico, who's a research fellow at Georgetown Genomics Lab, and Sunil Gandaria, who is Chief Innovation Officer at Age of Learning. So thank you all for joining us. And with that, we'll jump in. Maggie, the first question is for you. ESSER gave schools and districts more flexibility around funding decisions. With the ESSER spending deadlines over, what are some patterns you've noticed about how districts have used these funds to meet educational goals?
Yeah, thanks, Jaleel. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the whole Hunt Institute team for putting this together. So, like you said, the money was intentionally flexible. Districts received different amounts of money. They spent money differently. We actually have a piece out, Marguerite Rosa, the director of Economics, and I, in EdNext called "There Are No Silver School Spending Bullets." So I'm not here to say here was the best way and here was the worst way to spend it, but districts on average spend about half of their ESSER, their COVID relief funds, on labor, and the other half on everything else. So that was what it took to reopen schools, PPE, that was HVAC revamps, facilities repairs, any ed tech tools, any new technology they had, tutors, supplies, all of that in the other half. And I would say some districts set themselves up better than others for when these one-time funds ran out. So given that half of that money was spent on labor, some chose to spend that on one-time stipends to existing staff, while others committed to multi-year pay raises that might be difficult to sustain or hired more staff. But I would say regardless of how the money was spent because the deadline has passed. Um, Now is the time that districts should be investigating whether those investments are really paying off for students. I feel like now we wake up to some kind of sad, depressing, and urgent news about the new outcomes data that we have from students. So yesterday it was the TIMS, the International Math Assessment, that the US dropped a lot, especially in eighth grade math. So it's really urgent that we need to get kids back on track. So I think it's up to states and districts to figure out from all those expenditures what was working and what isn't working, and kind of have the the courage to defend the investments that did work, and kind of end the ones that didn't. So that could be evaluating whether new reading softwares are working. Are they, increasing reading scores? Maybe there's a district-wide investment in math instructional coaches. And sometimes it's hard to look at staff as being an investment for kids, but that's really what it is. So are they achieving the goals for students that we really want to see? I think now is the time to figure that out.
Thank you so much for that. And part of what schools and states and districts have spent their ESSER dollars on are technology, right? Devices and programs and things. So with that, Sue Ellen, I want to turn to you. In the post-pandemic era, education technology has been more prevalent than ever, and it's continuing to grow. So how have districts in Alabama taken steps to bridge the educational technology gap that emerged during the pandemic?
Thank you so much for asking that question. First of all, I want to say that we're so blessed to work with an innovative state superintendent, Dr. Eric Mackey, along with Deputy Superintendent Ms. Angela Martin and Assistant State Superintendent Dr. Melissa Shields. And they have led the charge of crafting a vision of every child, every chance, every day in Alabama schools. And this includes closing that digital divide and bridging those educational technology gaps. Alabama districts, just like many across the nation, have shown so much grit and determination in closing that digital divide over the last several years. It's really kind of hard for me to think that we were 5 years post COVID. And so, in thinking about that, I kind of thought about, okay, what are the 5 things that we've done in Alabama to help close these educational technology gaps? The first one has been through expanding access to devices. And just like she said just a minute ago, 50% was spent using COVID relief funds on things versus personnel. And many of those things were devices for students. Based on our recent inventory data, we see that we have approximately 780,000 student dedicated devices for our one-to-one initiatives, with an additional 585,000 student shared devices, bringing our total to around 1.3 million devices for our 721,000 students in Alabama schools. So we have the devices in the hands of our educators and our students. However, we all know we're approaching that fiscal cliff. So we do have districts, like many across the United States, who are worried about the sustainability of these devices, especially with them rapidly coming to end of life. So we've worked with districts to require a comprehensive technology needs assessment. That was due in June of this year. And once that needs assessment was completed, we worked with districts across Alabama to strategically develop sustainability plans for continued digital equity built on the next 3 to 5 years to make sure that EdTech plans will be sustainable and that the devices will continue to be in the hands of our students. The second way that we have addressed EdTech gaps is through improving access to high-speed internet. Through partnerships with ADECA, Alabama's Digital Expansion Division, as well as Alabama Supercomputer Authority, and the use of E-rate funding, internet connectivity in Alabama schools and communities has improved. We have installation of Wi-Fi on buses to installing fiber in our underserved rural communities. Alabamians are now connected more than ever before. And the expansion continues today, with our governor just awarding recently this year almost $150 million to expanding internet access across the state so that we can truly achieve full broadband access for all. As a matter of fact, this past week, I was able to see an independent service provider on my rural Alabama road beginning to install conduit for laying internet fiber soon. So I too may have access to high-speed internet in the very near future. Third, we've invested in professional learning. We all know that having a device and high-speed internet access are just the beginning, kind of like that basic tier or layer on Maslow's EdTech triangle. So if we think about that, without access to high quality professional development for educators, it's very difficult to maximize the impact that educational technology can provide to students. That is why in our EdTech section at the State Department, we're proud of the work being done by Alabama Technology in Motion. This initiative provides high quality professional learning to teachers and administrators throughout our state. We employ a EdTech specialist in each of our 11 regions, and their duty is to fulfill the role of tech integration coach as well as tech leader across our state. They lead professional development through professional learning communities, professional development workshops, and coaching cycles, and that can be done with individual teachers, small groups across a district, and more. This past year, our focus has been on digital literacy and computer science with an emphasis on artificial intelligence. To prepare our students for the world where AI is seamlessly integrated into everyday life and work, we must start with preparing our educators to understand it and to also be able to teach our children to use it ethically and responsibly. Another way that we have invested in professional development is through our Alabama Learning Exchange, known as ALEX, and we're partnering with institutions of higher education through our Exploring Today's Classroom initiative. This provides professional development to professors of pre-service teachers to provide ways in professional development regarding practical and effective use of technology in our K-12 schools. Next, we have further closed the educational technology gap in Alabama through our expansion and enhancement of Alabama Connecting Classrooms, Educators, and Students statewide, known as Access. This virtual learning program, although is on the cusp of a 20-year anniversary, we have actually expanded and provided some intentional strategies to improve this program in the last 2 years. Not only have we expanded the course catalog to include 109 virtual learning courses, we have also implemented a tiered support model for our districts. This support model is based on individualized data-driven support that we provide to students as well as district leaders and teachers. It has improved our success rate in virtual learning to 85%. This is up from 78% last year, and then previous years, 75% or below. We've also implemented the ability to humanize the screen in our virtual learning platforms. This includes synchronous opportunities through the use of Virtual. This is a safe and secure platform that is built on the model of a teledoc platform. This allows students to be able to get on-demand access to a teacher to answer their needs in real time. In addition to our Access virtual learning, we also offer the franchise model, which gives all schools in Alabama free of charge access to digital curriculum for grades 6 through 12 that are directly aligned to Alabama Course of Study standards, including access to high-quality virtual labs. We are seeing, as many of you across Alabama, a teacher shortage and the need for high-quality instructional materials as well as support for these teachers. These franchise courses and access provides an equal playing field for students to be able to access virtual labs and high-demand science courses where we are not always able to fulfill with a certified teacher. Finally, we are bridging the gap in Alabama by providing all of our schools with access to a student information system along with Unified Insights, a data analytics tool to assist educators with identifying gaps and needs in record time to personalize learning for students. As we are diving into exploring how we can use artificial intelligence more with data analytics and personalized learning models, we are excited about how far we have come and look forward to continuing to blaze the trails of closing the gap in the future.
Thank you so much, Sue Ellen, for that. And that's actually a great segue to Java, my question for you. How can education leaders further leverage data or student data and research to make informed decisions, particularly as they work to address learning loss and incorporate emerging technologies like AI into classrooms across states?
Thank you for that, sir. And also, I'd like to thank Hans Institute for having us today on the as a panelist and for the discussion. I would like to start off by talking about learning loss, right? So, learning loss is actually has exacerbated a little bit due to the result of the pandemic, because students having to learn in a different manner and style than they were traditionally used to learning, going into the classrooms, as a result of which learning loss has caused a little bit of more direction that different school districts have to take and as teachers have to focus on. For mitigating the gap that has resulted in the learning loss, there are several steps that districts can take and teachers can take too, and a lot of them are taking those, as Suhan had mentioned, that based on the data. For example, for you to identify a learning loss, data is very relevant, and it is a need and it is a must. It's the backbone and the foundation for determining learning loss. So from that perspective, having a holistic view as a strategy for data and looking at different aspects of the data of the student from the perspective of, let's say, this, you'll have to look at this not only just the student grade, which is the ultimate outcome after a test during the each of the quarters. We follow a quarter system here in Alabama, but you want to even look at the precursors of that, right? The test, the quiz, the different assignments they're given in class. So by looking at those data points and the trends in the data, the teachers would be able to identify where they can provide interventions. So that is a helpful tool and mechanism for mitigating the learning gap that they're observing for a certain group of students. In also doing that, from a leadership perspective, when I say leadership, I'm talking both from the state level and the district level, is they need to, and even the principals and administrators, they need to have access to that data too. So when they look at the data, you have to have strategies such as, you want to look at data from a informatics perspective, like take the data, look it from the informatics perspective, and see if we have to make any changes to the policies or in the way certain things are being done at the school level and the district level. Now you can also use the data which Sue Ellen had mentioned, that we have unified insights. Now that unified insights provides information to you wherein action can be taken by different stakeholders who are looking at the data from their perspective. Now, if you drill down further, at a higher level, you will see that the dashboards give you high level information and quick information for leaders to make decisions on what they want to do and how they want to approach in terms of their districts and their schools' learning gaps that they are looking at. So now we're talking a lot about data. Now, how can this data help from the research perspective too? Now, when we look at research, uh, we have to provide professional development so that the teachers you are comfortable in using the research information which is evidence based, and taking that evidence based information, they can apply those strategies that they have gleaned from the research material and make it localized, because some of the research might not be applicable to your area, but a portion of it, and customize it to their area so that the local research is helpful in mitigating the learning gaps that are being identified at the school level. Now, how does AI come into play with all of this? From a AI perspective, the first thing, okay, AI has been buzzing since the end of 2022, November, and the rapid pace at which it is growing, especially generative AI, that tool is a very capable tool for everybody. I'm talking from all the way from the student level. Uh, and if you go outside the school from to the parents, then you come back to the school, the teachers, the administrators, as well at the district level and the management folks. So in that context, how does AI help? From a student perspective, they can use it as an aid tool to help them in aid in understanding concepts that they're finding it difficult to understand. So let's take an example of the teacher. How does the teacher use the AI tool? The teacher can use it for creating lesson plans and creating uh, innovative projects and creative projects that will help the students apply critical thinking in what they are doing by using AI tools. And also, what they can do is the teachers can also use it for assessing if there are. I've seen tools where they can use it for assessing uh, the quiz or the test that they're given in the class. So based on the rubric they gave the student as well as what is within the AI, they will be able to uh, understand and analyze quickly and make that information available to the students, and as a result of which that could also help in the learning graph. Now, from the management perspective, they can use those tools to automate routine tasks, look up information quickly, and AI from a data perspective is it's not there yet, at least at our school levels, but it is coming maybe in the next year or so. We can integrate the different data sources, and you can use generative AI to uh, map those different data sources and ask a question or a prompt, is what they call today, to the generative AI tool, and it'll immediately give you back the response. And you can tweak that response based on your specific need because you're looking at the data. Now, if I give you a static report, you're looking at the data and you have questions. But the generative AI tool, as part of the student data, will help you drill down further and have the information at your fingertips fairly quickly.
Thank you for that, Java. I appreciate it. And Sunil, this is also a great segue to something that you and I talk about fairly often. So there's been a rise in the discussions about AI in classrooms, right? So how has the integration of AI in classrooms evolved over the past year? And how will this integration continue to evolve in the coming year and beyond?
Yeah, Jaleel, real pleasure to be here. And I've always enjoyed our discussions. And I've been thinking about a metaphor. I look at generative AI as like a young child in the earliest years of their life. So full of potential, growing rapidly, capable of learning at an incredible pace. But like a young child, they're capable of acting out. So what a young child needs, just like generative AI needs, is a thoughtful guidance and guardrails from adults who, in this case, what I mean by adults is the policymakers, educators, and industry leaders to ensure it grows in a safe, ethical, and nurturing environment so that it can reach its full potential. And that is what we're seeing now. This is the current state. And you're seeing it in Alabama, you're seeing it across the country, where the adults across the sectors are stepping up to ensure that generative AI has the guardrails in place to achieve the transformation our system needs and our students deserve. So what that means at a federal level, the Department of Ed has created a toolkit for AI integration that provides a roadmap for responsible AI use in schools. Over 20 states have provided guidance to ensure that educators and students use AI responsibly, but also ensure that they develop AI literacy on an equitable basis. Educational developers like my company, Age of Learning, and school districts are aligning to create an AI future. And a great example of this is something called the EdSafe AI Alliance, which proposes something called the SAFE benchmark. And the SAFE benchmark or framework is pretty straightforward, which is it looks at safe. So the letters are safety. So S is safety, protecting data, privacy, and security. There's accountability. We have to set really clear ethical standards in terms of how we use AI. The F is for fairness. So we need to design inclusive, unbiased tools. And finally, and very important, is these tools have to deliver efficacy, better results. So measurable learning outcomes for all of our students. You know, the exciting thing is that over 100 companies, including Age of Learning, we are signatories to this SAFE benchmark. School districts from New York City, Gwinnett County in Georgia, Linwood Unified in my home city of Los Angeles are all part of a policy lab network to ensure that schools can learn from one another and benefit their administrators, educators, and students. So where we are right now is like our Gen I baby is ready to walk and grow with the helping hands of the thoughtful and mindful adults that are guiding it.
Thank you for that. And thank you for the analogy to help us really put it in perspective in ways that some folks might understand a little bit better. So with that, I would like to ask all of you a follow-up question. And as I do that, just a quick reminder to submit your questions for our panelists in the Q&A section at the bottom. We do have a couple that have come in, but feel free to continue to drop those. As we look toward 2025, what trends in education are you looking forward to in your respective fields? Sue Ellen, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Java, Maggie, and wrap it with Sunil.
Thank you so much. So thank you for that question. As we look to 2025, I love Matt Miller's analogy of putting on our tomorrow glasses, looking at what is possible. And I'm really excited about many things that are possible in 2025. Of course, at the top of this list is AI-powered learning. AI tools with embedded safeguards can truly personalize learning experiences for our students, and that is so exciting. I'm a mother of 3 children, and my youngest, who is 10 years old, I'm excited to see how we can maximize her learning potential and educational pathway as compared to the journey my 15-year-old is on, or even my 21-year-old college student. How very different education could look for each of these students moving forward, along with all of the thousands and thousands of students across our state and nation. I'm also excited about the possibility of turning Bloom's 1984 2 sigma problem into a 2 sigma solution for students. We understand that a one-to-one personalized tutor has been a theory and an idea that could really impact student achievement, but has not always been attainable. However, now with AI personalized chatbots and tutoring with safeguards, AI is opening that door to make it more of a reality. And I'm thrilled to be in a space to help make that happen. Also, looking at data governance and ethical use. It's more important than ever before that we work with districts and schools to ensure that we have strong data governance policies and acceptable use policies and procedures to ensure data privacy, ethical use, and appropriate digital citizenship moving forward. I'm also excited about the rise of micro-learning, badging, micro-credentials, being able to have access to on-demand professional learning modules to enhance the workplace as well as impact the workforce. We are looking toward comprehensive learner records and open badges, and I'm excited to see the trend toward mastery of concepts versus looking at the seat time of a student in a class. Another thing that I'm excited about is the work and emphasis that I'm seeing on open standards, things like CASE and LTI. It is so important to have interoperability and seamless integration so that our technology can talk more effectively with each piece of technology so that we can improve user experiences. I'm really excited about this work as I'm seeing what One Ed Tech is doing across this platform and how our partnership has led to a redesign of our Alex Learning Object Repository. And this is going to launch in January of 2025. Another thing is about the use of virtual reality and augmented reality. We actually have a grant program that is happening right now with our Alabama Math, Science, and Technology Initiative, AMSTI, another acronym, you know, we love those. We've secured a grant with Curio XR to provide virtual reality headsets to our geometry teachers across our state. We are providing a way for students to become immersed in the learning environment and to learn geometry through this technology. I'm the daughter of a math teacher and I struggled with geometry myself. So I can only imagine how different my understanding would have been if I could have had this kind of technology in my hands back in the 10th grade. Also, I love that we're moving toward hybrid and flexible learning models. This pendulum has been shifting toward trying to find a balance. We've gone from only in person to only virtual to hybrid and everything in between. But we need to remember that technology is one of the many tools in our toolbox. We need to leverage it effectively, but that doesn't mean exclusively. So we need to have a blended approach, and we're really seeing that. And with leaders like Holly Clark, her reference is in the Infused Classroom book that she's written, is she has indicated the need to use technology, especially AI, to amplify great teaching rather than consider replacing teaching. And so as we're learning how to best blend ed tech tools with traditional practices and pedagogy, this is all exciting to me. I'm looking forward to being on this exciting, innovative journey, and I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Thank you. Java, what are you excited about?
Thank you for that, sir. I'm excited about everything Sue Ellen has said. And also, I would like to add one of the things I'm more excited about, and I'm hearing based on my conversations with several of the districts, is they are actually implemented policies of use of AI in the districts, and not all of them. People are getting there. Some of them have implemented. There are others are also working on it and going to implement that. So that is from a DI perspective. Looking from that perspective, if you take at the back end is the data. So as Sue Ellen said, having a good governance policy and ensuring that the data governance is being done in an effective and efficient manner. Those are the things also I'm hearing about from the district. So that is a good thing. The other excitement other thing that I'm excited about is the use of AI and generative AI by the students themselves or the kids themselves. So in that aspect, I'm excited for the students as well as the teachers. The reason being is they have a new tool which they can use and help them in understanding concepts which they would have had difficulty in understanding. Give you a simple example. Let's assume that I'm great at understanding and playing football in my school. However, there's a concept in science. Let's say, how does the brain and heart function? I'm just throwing that out as an example. If I'm not able to understand what is going on there, I can put that question to generative AI and say, hey, can you explain the function of the heart and the brain in relation to how a football team is playing? And boom, you got something that the student can easily understand the concept and relate to it. That is very helpful for them. Now, from the teacher's perspective, it will give them more time in terms of reducing their routine administrative task and use the additional time to help the students and also develop creative assignments and tasks for the students in the class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maggie?
Okay, so I think that 2025 will be the year that schools spend smarter. That's what's on my Christmas list as of right now, because I know that I'm putting it out there because I know that districts right now, they're deep in their, budget development talks. So I'm going to put it out there. We're going to spend smarter. And in a way we have to, because there's less money to go around. And so what I'm not looking forward to, but what I'm looking for is kind of how districts are responding to this moment. And how are they making sure that we're doing the best for kids. Like a recent RAND survey rated the budget as a #1 pressure point for superintendents. So this is really top of mind. And there's a lot of priorities that go on in school districts. But if we don't have the budget right, everything else kind of falls to the wayside. So I think right now districts are facing a few constraining factors. So a little less optimistic, but this is, we have to face the music on some of the factors that we see. So one is, like we talked about before, that the COVID relief funds ran out. And so that means that maybe some investments had to be ended. or maybe we have to figure out how to pay for the things that we want to keep. Second is that enrollment declines are here to stay. Of course, it affects districts differently and it affects states differently. But in general, they are putting a strain on district budgets, and fewer kids mean fewer dollars in the long run. So what are we doing to really address the fact that our student population is shrinking, and then is the system shrinking in the same way? And third is that state revenues are tighter this year and next year, estimated to be tighter next year than they have been in previous years. And so we have less money coming from there. And I know that there was a lot of focus on whether states had enough enough will and enough money to fill the gap there now that the federal relief funds ran out. But it's really a tight pressure on districts. So moving forward, what can we do knowing that there might not be that saving grace from the states? And fourth is the rising labor costs. So like I said before, some districts may have overhired. I mean, in general, schools are staffed at a higher level than they've ever been. Of course, some shortages might remain in certain districts and in certain areas. But in general, we have more staff than ever. And some of that addition was not just in teachers. Maybe there's teacher shortages, but we added a lot of support staff recently. I mean, that's because we have diverse needs of students, a lot of aides, a lot of instructional coaches. So I think now is the time to really look at that and figure out if this is the best structure we need for kids. And fifth is, and I think I saw a question in the chat about this, is that special education identification is rising. So we have a decrease in general student population, but we do see an increase in students being identified with disabilities. That puts a budget constraint on districts as well, right? Because the more students we identify, the more spending that comes along with that. And so maybe there's not something we can do about the identification, but is there something we can do about our spending there? And is it possible to improve reading instruction or math instruction for all students in a way that can help all students? So these are the things that districts are facing. It's not quite the most optimistic look at, but that's what I'm looking for, right? So how are districts responding to it? How are states responding to it? States have a role to play in this too. Knowing that districts are facing these, what is the guidance that states are putting out? And maybe it's not prescribing one type of investment, but really kind of responding and kind of holding districts accountable to making sure that they're producing good outcomes for kids given the constraining factors.
Thanks so much, Sunil. What are you looking forward to?
All right, I'm looking forward to three trends. Building on what Sue Ellen was talking about, really appreciate her calling out Bloom's 2 Sigma. So that trend around personalized learning, I think it's going to continue. It's something that we've been investing in for the last 10 years. Second is a growing focus on data and evidence that Java talked about. What is effective for our students, especially in the post-ESSER era, as money is going to become much tighter. And then growing attention by states in on pre-kindergarten. I was fortunate to attend the recent Early Childhood Leadership Summit in Las Vegas with Hunt Institute. It was fantastic to see all of those legislators really focus, or policymakers focused on, look, what can we do before a child enters formal schooling to ensure they're ready? As I think about these trends, and as somebody that's really focused on improving educational outcomes, you got to kind of look at it and design backwards from the problem. And the reality that we're facing in the country is that less than a third of our fourth graders are achieving proficiency in math and reading. And as you look at through the lens of poverty, only 20% of our students from low-income backgrounds are achieving proficiency. And the reality is, in our country, low-income students represent the majority of our student population in K-12. So we have a lot to fix. So the focus that we've had which is a continuing trend, is on personalized learning, and how do we use AI to ensure that that we're getting those outcomes. And what our focus at Age of Learning has been is to develop what we call a personalized mastery learning system that blends formative assessment and instruction to personalize learning for each child. And so what we want to use assessment for is really to serve and understand what a child's prior knowledge is as they come into our learning systems, and then we serve them up as Vygotsky would want us to, what they're ready to learn next. And so based on research, we're doing this to really get every child the learning trajectory they need to be successful. And then how do we use that data generated from these personalized learning systems to do what Sue Ellen was talking about? Like, how does she know what her child has done, her 10-year-old has done in classroom? And how can we provide her with the support she needs to really encourage her child's learning based on what the child learned, as well as support the teacher in the classroom with that data so that they can also serve up exactly what's right for that child offline. And clearly, generative AI will increase our ability to communicate in parents in real time, regardless of what their home language is. That trend, the second trend I was excited about, this focus on evidence and effectiveness of solutions to guide purchase decision. Maggie referred to that. Like, we got to be investing better, especially in this post-ESSER era. What we're hearing from state policymakers and schools they serve is they want to see data that, hey, the solution you're providing is going to be effective for children like ours, or our students like ours. And as a company, this is beyond saying we're delivering on a 2 Sigma promise, and that's research we've based on. We're really focused on having the evidence base. We have 23 ESSA aligned studies that show that our products, My Math and My Reading Academy, are effective. And we want to win this space because we're the most effective. And the more that states and school districts focus on effectiveness and efficacy, the better the solutions are going to get, because that's going to guide buying behavior. And one of the things that's emerging out of this is something that the Southern Education Foundation is working on called outcome-based contracting, which we're seeing a lot of interest from states as well as school districts, where there's a shared accountability among vendors like ourselves and the school district in terms of identifying the gains we want for individual students and whether our products actually achieve those gains. And so there's payment is actually contingent on gains being achieved. And we think models like that are really going to help solve this bigger problem we have. And this third trend, really excited about early learning. The recognition, there's so much, there's an opportunity gap between our children that come from poorer families versus those that have more resources. Pre-K, investment in pre-K that we're seeing across states, state-funded pre-K. Like, I'm in Florida now with one of our partners, the Early Learning Coalition of Palm Beach, and Florida funds pre-K for all students. And what they've added to that is accountability metrics that focus on both improving learning gains as well as increasing kindergarten readiness. And what we've seen is that using solutions like ours, we were able to improve kindergarten readiness rates here in Palm Beach by 25%, as well as these kids here achieved 4 additional months of learning. And this was with using our program for about 37 minutes per week over 26 weeks. So look, evidence, personalization, and investing in pre-K are fantastic trends that we would love to see continue, and are certain to help our children flourish going forward.
Thank you for that. And that's a really great point. So I'm excited about this next question. And Maggie, this is a question from our audience. Maggie, and I think it's best for you. How should education leaders engage stakeholders to identify the most critical areas for investment as ESSER funding winds down?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a great question. I think the thing about outcomes-based contracting, I was interested to hear Sunil's reaction to that as a company. Is that really is tying the two really important things, right? The one thing is the outcomes that we have for kids, and the other is the dollars. And we often don't see those put together. And so we at Edunomics, we watch school board meetings as one of our projects. We call it EduFlix, like a little play on Netflix. And it is such a fascinating project, because We watched, they all start differently. They have the Pledge of Allegiance, they pledge to the state flag, whatever their opening prayer is, their land acknowledgement, and they have separate pieces of their agenda. First is their academic outcomes, here's what's going on. Maybe they talk about their ed tech tools. They say, you know, this is how many students are, we bought this software, it's working great, we think, because all the schools have it. And so, right, so it like kind of stops at that. You know, we've got it, we've implemented it because every school has the tool. And then they talk about the budget, and like those conversations are not happening all together. And so I think one of the ways to really do this is to mesh these, right? Like, what are we paying for? Are kids using it, right? So sometimes we stop at the input, but if kids aren't using it, and I know that a lot of these softwares provide this data, so it's really a good relationship between the district itself and whatever vendors they have. Are they looking at the data? Is the vendor providing the data? Is there you know, some kind of collaboration between the two? And then does that actually result in how a contract is written? Are we reevaluating contracts that we've already signed on to? And other investments, you know, labor as well. It's kind of like all of the things that we've invested in. Are we actually connecting the dots between outcomes for students, these tools that we have purchased, and are they, you know, being used and implemented? And we don't just stop at the fact that everyone has them, but like, are they achieving the goals we want? And if they're not, there could be some, you know, renegotiating of contracts. Now's the time, you know, to innovate. So that's what I would recommend.
That sounds good. Do any of our other panelists have anything you want to add to that? Great, Java. This next question is for you. Can you provide an example of how teachers have adapted or used localized data and research to address and close learning gaps effectively?
Thank you for that. I don't have a specific example in terms of how a teacher or a group of teachers have used the data in reducing the gap. But however, I can tell the manner in which it can be done is by identifying, first and foremost, when you look at the data, you will see that, okay, this is the expectation from a student. Now, when you don't get that expectation, you see that by looking at the data. When you see the data, for example, let's take the teacher has given a test on geometry and testing the understanding the concept of the Pythagoras theorem. Now, if some of the students in the class have not been able to answer the questions based on the quiz or the assignment that was given in the class, that is reflected in the score that they get. Now, the teacher is able to get that information and use that information and focus specific methods of teaching for those kids on an individual basis, either through after class teaching or more emphasized coaching during the class by not actually targeting the student, but by restructuring the way the teacher is going to teach in the class. So those have been identified as methods of doing in various evidence-based tools that I've been noticing and in the research.
Thank you so much. And for all of our panelists, this question is for you. How can partnerships with educational organizations and other stakeholders contribute to the effective implementation of new educational tools and strategies in schools?
Here, let me take a crack at that. I think the partnership and mutual accountability is essential, and it starts with when you think about whether it's outcome-based contracting or just or not. It's really about identifying the population that you're trying to serve, the student population you're trying to serve, and the outcomes you desire for them, looking at the evidence base that a EdTech provider might bring in, or an education provider, solution provider might be, or is bringing in to say, does it match with what my students need and the problem we're trying to solve? And then understanding what it's going to require to implement that well, which means everything from, do we have the right devices? Do we have the right professional learning, PD? Do we know how we're going to fit it in to our school day so that the solution can be used with fidelity to get the results that based on the evidence that already exists, like there's a certain amount of usage that's going to be required to get to the outcome that's desired. And then that's pre-implementation, really having all those discussions, and then ensuring throughout the year that you have regular meetings, so you have a success plan for the students, and as part of that, monitoring, is the usage happening? Is the tool working? Who's not using it? How do we get them to use it? And ensuring that you partner tightly on all of those factors and evaluate the results on an ongoing basis. And I think that is really key to an effective education partnership between vendors and school systems.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit is in terms of partnership and ensuring that the um, educational organization as well as the tech companies the solutions are being adopted by the schools is if you one of the things to consider is because when I'm talking here, I'm talking about educational tools. Specifically, I'm talking about Gen AI and AI tools being used. So in that context, you have to look at it. There's a lot of change that happens. So you'd have to have some aspect of change management and how you manage the changes in the schools that needs to be considered. Besides that, Sunil also mentioned about the different points that needs to be evaluated. So by developing specific key performance indicators or SLAs, it will help in the partnership growth and development and sustenance because there will be a common understanding between the organization as well as the private educational providers that this is our expectation from the organization and is this being delivered, and that will be monitored on a continuous basis. And by having conversations and dialogue and providing the feedback, it will help in the successful implementations.
Thank you so much. One other question that has come up is about how education leaders can continue to support teachers in adapting technological advancements like AI. Do any of you have any thoughts about that or what you might be able to share with the audience?
Um, I'll take that question. I'll take a shot at that question. The way we can support from education leaders' perspective is to provide the necessary, uh, what do you call, I would say policies slash guidance, however you want to call loosely, right? I'm using those terms loosely. But when you talk about policies and guidelines, we're talking about how the AI needs to be used in the school, or rather in the district, and provide the necessary training and make those resources available to the teachers. Now, when we talk about policy and guidelines, it's not just for the teachers alone. It is even for the students to establish policies and guidelines. What is a ethical use of AI and how AI needs to be used in the classroom and what purposes can it be used. Now, let's take this as an example, right? The teacher gives an assignment to the student and tells like, okay, I want you to go ahead and use AI tool ABC. And then as a result of which I want you to do a comparative analysis of the results you get out of those three different tools. Now here you're developing critical thinking, but for the teacher to do that, if she has a policy in the classroom telling that she's going to use AI in the classroom, it will help the students understand what is the expectation of the teacher based on the tools that they have to use in the classroom. If there is no policy, then what happens is you might have different areas doing different things, or rather different schools doing different things, and there will not be uniformity from a district perspective, I'm speaking, not from a state perspective.
I'd also like to follow up and say that another way we as educational leaders can support our teachers is we have to lead by example. The educational leaders and administrators in schools and at districts must take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and be leaders in using this technology to demonstrate it. And while they're doing so, foster a culture of growth. Make sure that our teachers understand that we have a growth mindset and that there are going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be times that you're going to try to soar and you may fall and it may look like a failure, but we learn oftentimes in those moments much more than we ever learned just succeeding time and time again, and that it's okay, that it's all new, and it's okay to try something and say, you know what, that didn't work quite the way I wanted it to. But we as educational leaders have to do that. And as a former K-12 administrator, where I had, preschoolers all the way through seniors on campus, I had the opportunity to look at different tools, but I demonstrated those tools. I tried them out. I provided a coaching model. If teachers had questions, we would do side by sides together. And so as a leader in that building, we have to take those opportunities and those initiatives and provide the professional development. And if you don't feel comfortable, seek that professional development on your own so that you do become more comfortable, and let your teachers see that you're a learner too, and that you're learning right alongside them, and that this is new for all of us, and that it's a safe place within the culture of our schools to be able to try and innovate and implement these new technologies.
Yeah, I want to double down what you're saying, Sue Ellen. Like we're all learners in this. This is brand new to every one of us. So it's going to continue to evolve faster than we can learn. So you just gotta invest in that in terms of your own professional development so that you can help others through the same journey.
Thank you all so much. On that note, many thanks to our wonderful panelists for joining us today. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm excited about all that you have shared with us and our participants today. Before we do close the discussion, I want to make sure that everyone is aware of our upcoming webinars that you'll see on the screen there. Our next K-12 conversation will be held Thursday, January 16th. At 2 p.m. Eastern on building strong school communities through service learning and civic and engagement. We'll be sure to drop the registration link in the chat for you, and we'll also encourage you to join us for any of the other upcoming Hunt Institute webinars also listed on the screen, which you can register for on our website. So with that, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you all again very soon.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.